Another violation that we have to the don't repeat yourself principle is caused by this conditional instead of polymorphism. Here we see an example of the flags over objects anti-pattern, where it's violating the tell don't ask principle, which is also known as the dependency inversion principle, because we're asking this particular object whether or not it's a manager, and then using that to compute the bonus ourselves within this external calling code and setting it in a field within the employee object. Let's look at how we can refactor this to make it apply the dry principle and make it use the polymorphism instead of this if-then logic that will eventually be scattered throughout our code. So let's look at our employee class. We can see that it has this boolean for whether or not it's a manager. We can take that out of there and create a new class using inheritance. We can create a manager class that is an employee. And then the other thing we can do is we can create, and as well as this bonus, we want to be able to calculate the bonus based on the freight that's passed in our case. So we'll create a public decimal set bonus, let's say. And let's make this one only support get. Bonus is protected, and we have a set bonus method that takes in freight used for bonus. And we want to make this virtual. And then we will say for an employee that bonus now equals freight used for bonus divided by 1,000. But for a manager, we'll override that. And we'll simply say that bonus is equal to the freight divided by 10. That was our logic that we used before. And this can actually be void, it turns out, because it's doing all the work. Now we simply need to be able to create things as managers or employees as appropriate in our code. So if we look back at our program, here we're going to say that we get a new employee, and then based on whether or not it's got this particular row value, we're going to set it to something or the other. We could certainly create a factory method of some sort that takes in this row data and generates the correct class for us. But in this case, we can simply move these things around. We'll say var employee. Actually, we'll say employee here. And then we'll specify in our if statement that employee equals new manager. With a name equal to row 0 dot toString, and that's all we really need. Otherwise, we can pull this block here and say that we equal a new employee using our block we just snagged, and add them. Now that doesn't change this logic significantly. Let's see, there we go. But our for each logic now makes more sense, because now instead of having to do this check and ask, this is a violation of the tell don't ask principle, because what we're doing is we're saying I'm going to ask this whether or not it's a manager, and then I'm going to set something on it. And so this is a very common anti-pattern that you want to avoid. Instead, we want to just let our object do what it's responsible for, and it should be responsible for calculating the bonus in this case. Or we could create another object that does it, but certainly our main program shouldn't be doing this logic. So now we can simply call employee.setBonus, and we need to pass it in what the total freight value was, and all the rest of this can disappear. And that eliminates some repeated logic where throughout our code we might be doing this inspection of whether or not an employee is a manager or not, and doing some kind of different behavior based on that. Using inheritance and polymorphism, we're able to apply this right here in such a way that it does that generally, and we can use that same pattern throughout our code. If we run the code, we see that we still get the same results that we got before. Here you can see managers get 20 grand, employees get $207, which is what we had to begin with.